A firearm magazine is the part of a gun that holds and feeds bullets into the chamber. Magazines vary in size, some hold just a few rounds, others many more. High-capacity magazines typically hold more than 10 rounds. Several states have passed laws, known as magazine bans, making it illegal to sell or possess magazines over this limit. The main goal: public safety. Supporters argue that forcing shooters to reload more often could save lives during mass shootings by creating critical pauses. About 14 states, including California and New York, enacted these bans, but the rules differ. Some allowed existing owners to keep their magazines. Others required them to turn them in or modify them. These laws were often a response to mass shootings where high-capacity magazines were used. Supporters saw these magazines as tools that made mass violence deadlier, not necessary for self-defense. The debate became a national flashpoint, pitting public safety against gun rights. Opponents argued the bans were an overreach, while supporters saw them as a necessary step. The controversy set the stage for major legal battles over the Second Amendment. The legal fight over magazine bans reached the Supreme Court through Duncan versus Bonta, a case from California. California gun owners and the California Rifle and Pistol Association challenged the state's ban on magazines over 10 rounds, claiming it violated the Second Amendment. The case bounced through federal courts, with judges disagreeing on whether the ban was constitutional. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals initially upheld the ban, calling it a reasonable public safety measure. But in 2022, the Supreme Court's Bruin decision changed the rules for gun laws. Bruin required that any gun regulation must align with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. The Supreme Court sent Duncan versus Bonta back to the lower courts to apply this new test. This time, the Ninth Circuit found no historical precedent for magazine bans like California's. The reversal set up a final showdown at the Supreme Court. The case now had national implications. As similar bans existed in other states, the court agreed to hear the case, knowing its decision would impact gun laws across the country. Duncan versus Bonta became the defining legal battle over magazine bans. The outcome would determine whether states could restrict magazine capacity at all. The stage was set for a landmark ruling. Supporters of magazine bans focus on public safety and reducing mass shooting casualties. They argue that high-capacity magazines let attackers fire more rounds without reloading, increasing the number of victims. Research shows that the deadliest mass shootings often involve these magazines. Supporters say that forcing shooters to reload creates life-saving opportunities for escape or intervention. They view magazines as accessories, not core to the right of self-defense, and believe regulating them doesn't violate the Second Amendment. States like Washington argued that a 10-round magazine is enough for self-defense. The government, they say, has a duty to protect citizens from preventable harm. For them, magazine bans are a targeted, reasonable response to a specific threat. The inconvenience to gun owners is outweighed by the potential to save lives. The debate, they insist, is about limiting a feature that makes mass shootings more deadly, not about banning guns themselves. Opponents argue magazine bans violate the Second Amendment and target common, essential gun components. They say magazines over 10 rounds are standard for many popular firearms and used by millions for lawful purposes, including self-defense. Banning them, they argue, effectively bans the most common firearms. They point out that over 100 million such magazines are in circulation, making them neither dangerous nor unusual. Forcing smaller magazines, they say, puts law-abiding citizens at a disadvantage in self-defense situations. Criminals, they argue, will ignore bans, so only responsible gun owners are affected. The bans, in their view, punish everyone for the actions of a few. They also claim there's no evidence that magazine bans reduce crime or mass shootings. Reloading in a crisis can be dangerous, and arbitrary limits could cost lives. For opponents, magazine bans are an ineffective and unconstitutional restriction on a fundamental right. The Supreme Court's decision hinged on the historical test set by the 2022 Bruin case. The court examined whether magazine bans had any historical precedent from the 1700s or 1800s. They found no evidence of similar restrictions from that era. The majority ruled that magazines are essential to modern firearms, and thus protected by the Second Amendment. Since high-capacity magazines are common, they fall under constitutional protection. The court rejected the idea that magazines are mere accessories. Public safety arguments, the majority said, can't override constitutional rights without historical support. The decision made clear, if a gun law lacks historical roots, it's likely unconstitutional. The court's role, they emphasize, is to interpret the Constitution's text and history, not to weigh policy outcomes. This ruling set a new, stricter standard for all future gun regulations. The Supreme Court's ruling instantly invalidated magazine bans in about 14 states. States like California, New York, and Washington could no longer enforce their restrictions. Gun owners and stores could legally buy, sell, and possess standard capacity magazines for the first time in years. State officials scrambled to update guidance and adapt to the new legal reality. The decision sparked celebration among gun rights supporters, who saw it as a major victory. Gun control advocates, meanwhile, warned it could make mass shootings more deadly. The ruling also created confusion, as states worked to formally repeal old laws. Some states began exploring new ways to regulate firearms within the new legal framework. The debate over gun control is far from over. New legal battles are already brewing. The decision deepened the national divide over gun rights and public safety. For now, the Supreme Court's ruling stands as a turning point in American gun law. The future of gun regulation remains uncertain and fiercely contested. The impact of magazine bans was felt by small businesses like Gators Custom Guns in Kelso, Washington. Owner Walter Wentz saw sales drop 40% after Washington banned magazines over 10 rounds. Many popular firearms he sold came standard with now illegal magazines, hurting his business. Wentz, with the Second Amendment Foundation, challenged the law in court. They won a brief victory in 2024, but the ban was quickly reinstated pending appeal. In 2025, Washington's Supreme Court upheld the ban, but Wentz didn't give up. He petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court, linking his case to Duncan versus Bonta. When the Supreme Court struck down magazine bans nationwide, it was a win for Wentz and other small business owners. The ruling allowed him to sell standard magazines again, restoring his business. Gator's story shows how these laws affected real people and livelihoods. For Wentz, the fight was about more than profit. It was about constitutional rights. The Supreme Court's decision vindicated his long legal battle. His shop became a symbol of the broader struggle over gun laws in America. The Supreme Court's decision marks a new era for gun regulation in America. States with magazine bans must now formally repeal their laws, though they're already unenforceable. Law enforcement will stop prosecuting magazine-related cases. Gun control advocates are shifting strategies, looking for new laws that might survive the Bruin test. Some states are considering permit requirements or limits on bulk ammunition sales. These new measures will likely face legal challenges under the stricter historical standard. The Supreme Court may soon be asked to clarify what counts as a valid historical tradition. Lower courts are already divided on other gun laws, like assault weapon bans and age restrictions. The legal landscape is in flux, with more litigation on the horizon. The debate over gun rights and public safety is far from settled. The Supreme Court's ruling was a clear win for Second Amendment advocates, but the cycle of legislation, lawsuits, and court decisions will continue. The future of gun laws will be shaped by ongoing battles in courts and legislatures nationwide.